This feels very familiar. Did I do this already? This is a review of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Cause and Effect. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know why the number 3 is suddenly popping up all over the place, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. I'm pretty sure when I announced that the theme of this batch of reviews included time loops, this is the episode most of you thought of first. Me too, actually. What happens in this one? Allow me to summarize. We begin with the destruction of the Enterprise and the death of everybody on it. The scary emergency lights are on, one of the engines is damaged, and the ship is spinning out of control. Picard gives the abandoned ship order, and then, boom! God damn, I thought the show was doing pretty well. Did they really need to retool it so radically at this point? Shit. Oh, never mind. After the opening credits, everything is back to normal. The ship is fully intact, the crew seems fine, everybody's going about their usual routines as though the catastrophic events we just witnessed never happened. This must be where the writers of Voyager stole that from. We get a captain's log from Picard saying that the Enterprise is entering the Typhon Expanse, an unexplored region of space, and then we cut to a poker game with Riker, Worf, Crusher, and Data. The current hand builds to a showdown between Riker and Crusher wins when she calls Riker's bluff. Riker's like, "How'd you know I was bluffing?" Crusher says, "I don't know, I just had a feeling." Crusher is called to sickbay, where Geordi has just reported after experiencing a bout of dizziness that nearly made him fall down the warp core. "At first I thought the catwalk was spinning. Turns out it was me," he says. Crusher gives him a shot for his dizziness and suggests locking down those spinning catwalks just to be safe. Then she says, "Wait, have I treated you for this before? I just got a major feeling of deja vu." Geordi says, "No, I've never had these symptoms before. You're crazy." That evening, Crusher is ready for bed, pruning one of her house plants, sipping some night-night juice. She climbs into bed, turns out the lights, and then she hears voices, the eerie, indistinguishable chattering of a lot of voices, all talking at once. She reaches out in the dark to turn the lights back on and knocks over her glass, which shatters on the floor. The next day, there's a senior staff meeting in the observation lounge. They're talking about all the science shit they're fixing to do in this region of space. Beverly brings up the voices she heard the night before. Data says sensors didn't read anything unusual last night. Troy didn't sense anything out of the ordinary. Then Worf calls everyone to the bridge. A scary space cloud just appeared nearby. The cloud is a space-time distortion, and its effects cause the Enterprise's systems to malfunction. Riker calls for red alert. Another ship emerges from the space cloud on a collision course with the Enterprise. Shields are down, the helm is stuck, and the other ship isn't responding to hails. Picard's like, "I'm open to suggestions." Riker says, "Decompress the shuttle bay. That should blow us clear." Data says, "Use a tractor beam to deflect the other ship." Picard says, "Ignore Beardy and do what the smart robot man says. Tractor beam." The tractor beam doesn't deflect the other ship far enough, and it collides with one of the Enterprise's nacelles, and hey, look, it's the start of the episode. They must have dropped the same scene from before into this part by accident. What an embarrassing editing mistake. Anyway, the ship blows up as previously seen. Back from commercial, and hey, wait a minute, it's the beginning of the first act all over again. Picard's voiceover about charting the Typhon Expanse is even the same. Same lines anyway, sounds like a different take. They're playing poker again, same scene as before, but not the same shots. Do you think they're doing this on purpose? The poker hand proceeds as it did when we saw it before, only this time Riker realizes that Crusher is going to eventually call his bluff and folds before she has the chance. How did he know? He just had a feeling. Crusher is called to sickbay, there's Geordi, spinning catwalk, yada yada, only this time when Crusher says it's like she's treated Geordi for these symptoms before, Geordi agrees. That evening, Beverly's getting ready for bed, and the same thing happens as before. She turns out the lights, she hears voices, knocks over the glass as she turns on the lights. Crusher goes to Picard's office to talk to him about this. He agrees it's unusual, these feelings of deja vu. He even had a moment like that himself earlier, when he was reading a book. He says he'll have Geordi and Data run some extra scans just to be sure, but it's probably nothing. He gives Crusher a cup of hot milk with nutmeg and sends her to bed. The next morning at the staff meeting, Data and Geordi report that their extra scans didn't pick up anything. But Crusher says that 10 other crew members also heard voices like she did. Then Worf calls everyone to the bridge. There's the scary space cloud. There's the other ship. The tractor beam doesn't work. Boom goes everybody. Back from commercial, Picard tells us the Enterprise is beginning an exploratory mission in the Typhon Expanse. And I'm like 75% sure they're doing this on purpose. 70%. Poker game, only this time everybody is feeling the deja vu. They even successfully predict what cards Data is going to deal them. Crusher anticipates Geordi's arrival in sickbay to get treated for dizziness. She checks Geordi's visor and finds that it's been somehow picking up images of things that aren't there. That's what caused his dizziness. Picard tells Geordi to run some kind of specialized scan to look for anything that might be causing his visor to see these images, and that might also be responsible for the feelings of deja vu people are experiencing. That night, Crusher doesn't change for bed. She's still in her uniform, and when those voices start, she grabs her tricorder and records them. She calls Geordi, who tells her they just picked up something on their special scan, too. Crusher grabs her jacket and heads out and knocks over her glass again along the way. Geordi and Data analyze the recording Crusher made of the voices and discover that they are the voices of the Enterprise crew, all 1,000 and something people on the ship, talking at once. At a staff meeting, Data plays a few isolated snippets from the recording. Worf describing the space cloud as a space-time distortion. Data announcing that the other ship is on a collision course with the Enterprise, and Picard giving the abandoned ship order. Geordi shares their theory for what's going on. Somehow, the Enterprise has become trapped in a time loop, repeating the same events over and over again. They enter the Typhon Expanse, encounter the space-time distortion, collide with the other ship, and the explosion after they collide with the other ship sends them back to the beginning. That's why so many people are experiencing deja vu. There's no telling how many times they've been through this, and there's no obvious way out. Well, the obvious way out is avoiding the collision with the other ship, but how do they do that? They've obviously failed to avoid it so far, and Geordi reminds the others that if they fail to do it this time when the loop resets, they'll forget everything they figured out this time. But there might be a way around that. They know that remnants of previous loops carry over into future loops, the voices people hear, the after images Geordi's visor sees. If they send out a technobabble emission at the right frequency, they could send themselves a message in the next loop. It would have to be simple, maybe just a single word, and it would only be perceived by the processors in Data's robot brain. But it's their only chance. Future Data will then perceive that message, whatever it is, subconsciously. The space cloud appears, the other ship emerges, Riker says, decompress the shuttle bay, Data says, tractor beam. The tractor beam doesn't work, the ships collide, and at the last second before the Enterprise explodes this time, Data types something into his keypad cuff. Boom! All right, good job everybody, let's run through it one more time. Typhon Expanse! Poker game, but this time another twist. Crusher predicts what cards Data will deal, but instead of what she says, Data deals everybody a 3. Then he deals everybody 3 of a kind. That's weird. I mean, the whole situation is weird, but this is a flavor of weird we haven't encountered yet. Geordi in sickbay. Beverly runs a scan on his visor. We cut to Picard reading, and he starts paging through the book like he just noticed something strange about it. The sense he's read it before, perhaps? Crusher calls Picard to sickbay, tells him about Geordi seeing after images in his visor. Picard tells him to do the specialized scan thingy, and then we cut to Geordi and Data running that scan in main engineering. Data is working a console, when suddenly the display shows nothing but the number 3 over and over again. They detect something unusual in their scan, and a moment later, Crusher calls down to say she just heard voices. Then, we hear the sound of her breaking her glass. Dr. Crusher, are you okay? I'm fine, I just broke a glass. You should just use a plastic cup. I was drinking some wine before bed. Only white trash drinks wine out of a plastic cup. I drink wine out of a plastic cup. You are the whitest trash! Anyway, I'll be right there. They have the staff meeting, they play the recordings they snipped out of the voices, Geordi explains that they're caught in a time loop, and then Geordi and Data bring up how they've been seeing the number 3 a whole lot lately. They also detected an unusual fluctuation in Data's robot brain, which Geordi says might be some kind of attempt by their past selves to send a message through into a future lap of the time loop. But if the message is just the number 3, what could that possibly mean? There's no time to figure it out now. The space cloud is here, and here comes the other ship. Everything's happening as it happened all those times before. The other ship is approaching. Riker says decompress the shuttle bay. Data says tractor beam. But this time, Data looks over at Riker and notices the 3 gold pips on his collar. He says, "Oh, shit, the tractor beam's not going to work. Beardy is right." And he quickly decompresses the shuttle bay. The decompression knocks the Enterprise to the side, and this time, the other ship passes by without a collision. They did it. The Enterprise clears the time distortion, and their systems come back online, and Picard asks Worf to call Starfleet and get the correct time. It turns out they were trapped in that time loop for 17 days. Worf identifies the other ship, the USS Bozeman, another Starfleet vessel, Soyuz class. Geordi exclaims that the Soyuz class has been out of service for 80 years. Picard hails the Bozeman, and the captain appears on the view screen. "This is Captain Morgan Bateson. I'm listening." Picard explains that the Enterprise has been trapped in a time loop, and it looks like the Bozeman has as well. Captain Bateson is like, "Nah, you're mistaken. We just left space dock 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago in this very fine current year of 2278. Picard's like, "Maybe you need to call for the time, motherfucker." The end. Anybody else remember when you could call for the time? We don't really do it anymore because most of us have smartphones that set their clocks automatically, and most new appliances with clocks set theirs automatically too. But once upon a time, if you were setting a clock and you wanted to know the exact time, there was a number you could call on the phone and a voice would tell you what time it was. I still remember what the number was around here, 844-1212. It's been out of service for years, but the U.S. Naval Observatory still has a number you can call for the time, 202-762-1401. Check it out.
U.S. Naval Observatory Master Clock. At the tone, Eastern Daylight Time, 11 hours, 46 minutes, 45 seconds. Universal Time, 15...
And see how easy and convenient that was? Different countries have their own telephone time services that are still functioning, but if you're ever in the United States and you think you've been trapped in a temporal causality loop and you want to confirm the correct time, and you can afford to wait just an incredibly long amount of time while the phone rings, apparently, now you know what to do. You can thank me by giving me money. Anyway, I love this episode. Cause and effect should be shown to students who want to learn how to write and how to direct. It's an example of how you can start with a clever premise and explore and expand that premise in a way that is both creative and technically competent and wind up with something incredibly entertaining. Let me start with the writing, because on a certain level, I think this is one of the best written episodes of Star Trek ever produced. It doesn't have the political or sociological messaging that many of the best episodes in the franchise have, nor does it have the emotional impact. It's not The Drumhead or The Visitor, but in terms of structure, on a purely mechanical level, it's damn near a masterpiece. First, we've got the most audacious cold open ever. It takes a certain amount of guts on the part of the creators of the show to begin the episode by blowing up the ship and killing everybody. Oh, the Enterprise exploded and everyone's dead? I wonder what's going to happen next. You have my attention. Blowing up the ship in the teaser and then showing the ship fully intact and cruising along like nothing happened after the credits is not only a bold move in terms of dramatic structure, it's bold because telling a story that way risks confusing the audience. And apparently, some people in the audience when the episode was originally being broadcast did find it confusing. There's a special feature documentary on one of the DVD or Blu-ray releases that mentions how when this episode aired back in 1992, there were people calling their local TV stations to complain that the episode was repeating itself, thinking there was some kind of malfunction. Some of you might be saying, "But Steve, surely that's impossible. Star Trek fans are far too intelligent to be fooled that way." But you're forgetting. This was back when Star Trek shows were produced and marketed to a general audience, rather than made to narrowly appeal only to the pre-existing hardcore fan base. That's why they were commercially successful and culturally relevant. But that general audience is also full of oblivious dum-dums who don't pay attention to the shows and movies they watch. Not like Star Trek fans at all. And as a result, some of them didn't realize they were watching a story being told in a slightly unconventional way. They thought something was actually wrong. I hope somewhere Orson Welles was having a good laugh in between humongous bites from a plate of infinite spaghetti. The repetition of the same day over and over again is a solid gimmick, but a gimmick is all it is. If the episode didn't have anything else going for it, I'd probably regard it as a curiosity rather than a classic. Fortunately, there is more going on. The predicament in which our heroes find themselves in this episode is twofold. First, they're reliving the same day over and over again. Second, and just as importantly, they don't know they're reliving the same day over and over again. In other well-known time loop stories, like the Richard Lupoff short story 12:01 p.m., or the movie Groundhog Day, or for a slightly more recent example, the movie Edge of Tomorrow, the hero of the story is aware all along that they are repeating the same period of time, and their awareness of and attempts to adapt to the repetition is what drives the story. In Cause and Effect, the crew of the Enterprise has no idea what is happening. Every time the loop resets, they start over, oblivious to their ongoing situation. This leaves our heroes to deal with two problems. Before they can figure out how to escape the time loop, they first need to realize that they are trapped in a time loop. This twist increases the apparent difficulty of the problem and ramps up the tension as well, since by the time they figure out what's going on, the loop is nearly over and they have only a brief window in which to try and do something about it before they are snapped back to the beginning. The episode is a wonderful example of how to write in such a way so that the story seems to emerge naturally from the premise. We watch the characters go through a full loop once, completely unaware that anything unusual is taking place. Strange occurrences like Crusher's déjà vu when treating Geordi's dizziness or the voices she hears at night are noted but not taken seriously. But as the loop replays itself over and over again, these strange occurrences accumulate and become more pronounced, and by the third time through, it's starting to become obvious to more than just Dr. Crusher that something odd is going on. And because they're smart and capable people, our heroes investigate, they ask questions, and they start to figure things out. It's also an example of how to use dramatic irony. Because of that teaser where the ship blows up, we know right away, if we're paying attention, that something funny is going on, that time is repeating itself. We know more than the characters know, but we don't know everything. We know the what, but we don't know the how or the why, and we don't know what they're supposed to do about it. We know just enough to be able to comprehend the character's predicament and be able to root for them to overcome it. Some technobabble does come into play. There's lots of talk of the surrounding Dekion field, which is what enables them to ultimately send messages through to the next iteration of the loop. But crucially, the technobabble plays only a supporting role in the solution to the problem. The moment of truth isn't about technology or complicated sci-fi anomalies at all, but about a simple choice, option A or option B. And it's a choice that's been shown to us all along. Riker makes a suggestion, Data makes a suggestion. Picard always goes with Data, but thanks to the message sent from the previous loop, Data realizes that his suggestion is wrong and Riker's is the correct choice. It's a complicated problem with a solution that could not be more basic. Go left instead of going right, and change your destiny. The episode is very plot-driven, which is fine when the plot is as cleverly devised and presented as this one, but there are subtle thematic and stylistic touches that lift it above merely a clever episode. One of the recurring events in the loop is Beverly breaking her wine glass. It happens every time. There are other events that happen every time as well, but what gives the breaking of the wine glass added weight is how it comes to represent the fate the heroes are trying to escape. The third time through the loop, Beverly's déjà vu is stronger than ever, and when she sits the wine glass down on her bedside table, just like she's done in previous loops, something tells her not to put it there, and so she moves it to a table in the middle of the room. Then she hears the voices, records them, calls Geordi, who confirms that something strange just happened, and she grabs her coat, and on her way out of the room, her coat sweeps over the table, knocks the glass to the floor, and the glass breaks. Beverly stops and gives the broken glass a concerned look. She tried to avoid breaking the glass, to at least stop this little piece of history from repeating itself, and she failed. Despite her efforts, the glass broke anyway. Is that also the destiny of the entire crew? To try and change what happens, but always fail? There's another subtle touch which I appreciate. In the final time through the loop, Data receives the message from the previous loop and interprets it by manifesting conspicuous instances of the number 3. First, we see 3s popping up in the poker game. Then we see 3s filling the computer console in engineering. And when Data notices the 3 rank pips on Riker's collar at the climax of the episode, that's the third time we've seen Data perceive a significant 3. 3 3s. Just an elegant little detail. As important as the writing is to this one, so is the directing. We see the same events occur over and over again, and the episode is repetitious by design, but thanks to the way it is shot, it never becomes monotonous. We see the same events, but from different angles. Every time the poker scene begins, we enter on a different shot. The setups and camera movements differ in the various versions of the staff meeting in the observation lounge. The scene on the bridge before the explosion is shot and cut differently every time. Different shots of the Enterprise exploding are used throughout the episode. Picard's captain's log voiceover is the same line, delivered the same way every time, but a different take each time through the loop, creating an uncanny effect, giving us a new version of something we've seen before. Certain shots, like the one of the Bozeman colliding with the Enterprise's nacelle, are exactly duplicated every time, but that's done to establish a pattern that can then be broken. We see the same shot of the collision over and over again, and then at the end, the shot setup is the same, but the collision is avoided. Just like with the writing, in terms of technique and storytelling mechanics, the direction is damn near flawless. And at the end, there's that fun cameo with Kelsey Grammer playing the captain of the other ship. It's such an obvious, oh hey, look who it is, that it almost takes me out of the episode. Almost, but not quite. Grammer, to his credit, underplays the scene, which is what allows it to work. Cause and Effect was written by Brannon Braga and directed by Jonathan Frakes. Braga wrote or co-wrote 24 TNG episodes and went on to write and produce for Star Trek Voyager, co-create and write and produce for Star Trek Enterprise, and co-write the films Star Trek Generations and Star Trek First Contact. Out of all of that, I think Cause and Effect is right up there with Braga's very best work. Frakes directed 8 TNG episodes in total, as well as episodes of Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, and Starfleet Academy, plus the feature films Star Trek First Contact and Star Trek Insurrection. Of the TNG episodes Frakes directed, I don't think Cause and Effect is the best episode, but it's Frakes' best work as a director. There can be a million different reasons why a story works and why it doesn't, but most of the time, it comes down to concept and execution. Cause and effect starts with a concept that is familiar and easy to understand, but complex enough to explore through the hour, and the execution of that exploration is done with a skill and creativity which is compelling and draws us in. It works remarkably well. With clockwork perfection, you might say. It's one of the most entertaining and engaging shows TNG ever produced. An episode I can watch over and over again. Those are my thoughts on Cause and Effect. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time as this batch of reviews of episodes featuring time loops and paradoxes continues. We'll shift our focus from TNG over to Deep Space Nine and look at an episode from that show's third season titled Visionary. See you next time for that. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody. This feels very familiar. Did I do this already?